Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charlie Mike, hosted by me, Mike Buchanan. Hey, listen, today we have a good buddy of mine, well, a good buddy of mine now that we've met each other, Logan Beadle, right?
That's right.
Is that how you pronounce it, Beadle?
That's correct. Yeah, okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's spelled a little funky. It's not like the Beatles, okay?
It's close.
It's close. It is very close. So, Logan, just a regular old vet, so we're going to hear a story. I like these changes of pace, because normally I have, like, people from, like, organizations or whatever in here, but, like, I'd rather like focus on like veteran stories.
Yeah, I definitely I don't resemble or what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't
represent.
There we go. I don't represent a group necessarily, and I don't have like a crazy story where I pulled people out of a burning tank or things of that nature.
Yeah.
But I hope that my story, my experiences can just help other people that feel similar, right? Like they feel normal and they've had stuff, ups and downs, and they don't know where to go. And if anything I can do can help them, then man, high five. So like my oldest daughter, she was little when I went to my first deployment, and I'm telling you, she was genuinely convinced for a long time that because I went to war, I killed a bunch of people. I mean, I remember her crying one night when I tucked her in. She's crying and she's like, "Dad, just tell me the truth. I can handle it." She's like 6. At this time, 5 or 6 at this time. So like, "Dad, just tell me the truth. I can handle it. How many people did you kill?" And I mean, I chuckled because I was caught off guard. Like, sweetie, I didn't kill anybody. "Dad, you went to war. I just tell me the truth."
Yeah, but just because you went to war doesn't mean you killed anybody.
Like, sweetie, lots of people go to war and never shoot a gun.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think a lot of people realize that though about like the military, is that like the military is the 1% of America. Okay, already 1% of America, okay, joins the military.
Yep.
Then 1% of that military, so 1% of the 1% that join the military, okay, are in combat roles that will actually see
hardcore, like actual combat, not like they just happen to get shot at or whatever.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. So like 1% of the 1% are actual, like you're gonna get shot at. Like this is your job to be shot at. You will shoot back. You will potentially kill somebody.
Yeah.
Like this
like
is
it's part of your job description.
Yep, part of your job description, straight out. So it's 1% of the 1%.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of people, right?
No, I mean, if you really stop and think about it, I would go so far as to say that, man, I don't know, 80 or 90% of the military is probably never in that type of
direct fire combat.
Not even just that, like the opportunity to experience it.
Oh, sure.
You think how many admin positions and security positions that don't leave the wire and they're just chilling and all these other roles like doctors and supply and all this other jazz, right? These regular people, I mean, the entire Air Force. You look at these people and they never have the light of day shown on an opportunity to be in any type of combat. So
yeah, and I will say this though, is that like I used to have a brainwashed mentality of all the rest of the support staff, right? Because like when you're in that combat role, like they brainwash the crap out of you to get you to think that like everyone else that doesn't do this is worthless.
I think you have to create some of that, man. I hate
you have to
it.
Because like what is going to keep you getting up in the morning and going and getting shot at again, other than like thinking like you're the best thing that's ever happened in the world, right?
So here's the deal: you can't have a bunch of alpha types, which is what it takes. You can't have a bunch of alpha types in these super high risk environments, and then be like, you know what? That guy over there that's washing dishes, he's just as good as you.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I hate saying it, but like you have to feed the ego because those people are going and risking their lives and you need them to do it without a second thought.
Yeah.
We did some pretty cool stuff in helicopters. I was a Black Hawk guy my whole career, basically, most of my career. And there were people there's a spectrum for everything, right? We had guys that were super alphas and people that were borderline betas, and you just didn't want those betas. You didn't want your life in their hands. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. So I can understand that.
It is what it is. Like, does that mean that like cooks and supply guys and all those guys weren't awesome and weren't very valuable and couldn't have been equally awesome in the same opportunity? No, that maybe they would have been. But man, you got to feed those people that are tip of the spear. You got to feed that ego so they go do what has to get done without thinking twice. And
agreed.
If that means that the cost of that is them puffing their chest up, then so be it. So it's kind of funny. So when we're talking about this, like in real life, because I was aviation, like I don't know what most of this is. Like I literally, I genuinely,
That's fine.
I lived a different life. Like I really did. I hate saying that. It sounds so arrogant, but I mean, rules.
That's
like,
very true, though. I mean, you did.
Aviation is, as much as we joke about this type of stuff right now and like tip of the spear and all that jazz, ain't nobody mad at the helicopter guys because we save everybody's bacon. And I don't even mean that from like an ego. I mean, when I was in Iraq, we were taking people places that had been sitting at this base for months. They wouldn't let them on a truck because it was in the Triangle of Death. There was no way for them to get anywhere. And they were trying to get to funerals. They're trying to get to weddings. They're trying to get to whatever. And when we showed up, we just had a, like, if we've got seats, we'll take you attitude. Mm-hmm. And people were crying. Dude, people go be hardcore. They go spend 10 years being an airborne ranger, and then they go to aviation because they're like, dude, I'm tired of getting my body busted. I'm tired of blowing my knees, and I'm tired of living hard. Why am I sleeping on a cot in a tent? Dude, you guys stay in hotels, and you guys eat at steakhouses? I'm tired of throwing stones at it. I just want to live it.
Let's get into this. Let's get into, let's talk a little bit about your story, right? Okay. Like, I know that offline we've talked, right? Yeah. And so I know that your story is rough, right? I think though
people have had it better and people have had it worse. But
yes. I think that a lot of us who really get into the business of like really wanting our story to be heard know that our story is rough, right? Yeah. Rough enough to where people can identify with it.
Yeah.
And to where we think that it may help somebody the way that I'm sure that you heard a story from someone else that eventually helped you, correct?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into that. Let's kind of talk a little bit about that.
So, I mean, man, it's, without going like when I was 6, right? Without getting into like the crazy stuff, you grow up and you live your life.
Yep.
And you're wired a certain way because of the way you're raised and where you grow up and all that jazz and all those influences on you. And then you join the military and you start doing your thing, and if you're of our generation, then you ended up going overseas. And I was pretty young, been married a couple years, had a little girl, and I go to Iraq, and like I was there for the surge, man, 07, 08, and it was pretty crazy. And I'm not going to pretend that I had the worst deployment ever, because so many guys had it 1,000 times worse than I did. But nonetheless, you live on the razor's edge for almost a year and a half. We had a 4.5-month MOB. Like what that does to your mind.
Yeah.
Spending 4.5 months getting ready, and they took every opportunity to tell us, hey, we're going to do everything we can to make this as painful as possible, so when you get to combat, it's a breeze. So we get to this point where we didn't trust our leadership. We kind of resented it. So now you've got this problem, this dichotomy between the leaders and the followers, right? And then you go live in this crazy environment. The unit that we replaced had 2 birds shot down right before we showed up. So we knew we were showing up in real deal. My first flight's like a freaking movie, dude. Genuinely, no joke. Hollywood could use it as a movie. I remember flying into Iraq, looking up and going, dude, we have Apache escorts. Like I've never had an Apache escort in my life. Like,
wait, what do I need this for?
This is real.
Yeah.
And my first flight, dude, it's night vision. I have no idea where the heck I am. I'm new. I've been in the military for a minute, but I'm new as a crew chief, and I'm new to this role. I'm new to all these things, and there's machine gun fights on the ground. I mean, I went from training at the range to there's literal gunfights happening. People are shooting at it. Why does it look like softballs are coming at us?
Yeah.
Right? Where they're not shooting little baby guns. Okay, they shoot big guns.
Yeah.
At helicopter. Expectation was excellence all of the time. We broke the records for flight time in a combat zone, and we became a known quantity, so much so that 2-star, 3-star, SecDef, like these entities are requesting our specific company come run their VIP missions in Iraq. So we're going all over the place doing all kinds of things, and I'm a young kid, super alpha, trying to fit in, trying to make a name for himself, don't have a clue about politics and relationships and all that jazz. Like it's a recipe for disaster. And you come to the end of this, and I hate to say it, but I think at least our leadership at the time, like they were wired for one thing and one thing only, and that was to go win, this deployment, to go put a stamp on it. And I don't think that they were prepared for that cost, like the social cost of what that means to have these people working in that environment under that type of stress, day in, day out, and not look back. And
well, yeah, it's also, I mean, I hate to I hate to stop you from talking, but it's also like special operators talk about this all the time, right? Like when we were tasked out with a special forces unit, my second deployment, and we heard them talk about this all the time. And I didn't even realize like some of the conversations that these special operators have when, you're just I guess, away from the cameras and away from the spotlights or whatever. And they have normal conversations like normal soldiers do, right?
Yeah.
And so they'll sit there and they'll talk about like operational tempo, like op tempo, right?
Dude.
Is like, it's insane. And so like their op tempo is constantly go, 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 go. And I mean, they might be deployed for 6 or 9 months instead of 12 months, but like that's 6 months and it's 6 months back and it's 6 months gone and it's 6 months back and it's 6 months gone. And so like it's insane. And their op tempo is so much that that's where they start to develop all these problems, right?
Yeah.
They start to develop a lot of mental health issues and a lot of other, some of their people just can't handle the tempo. It's not the work. They can't handle the work. They can handle the work. It's just the amount of work that's coming at them and so fast. It gets a little much.
So I've developed this, I guess, this saying with my kids and with my family and some of my friends now, and it applies to this exact scenario. And I said, there's a tax for everything, right? So if my son is getting bullied, it's because these kids can just extract whatever social pain they want from him, and it's tax-free, right? If he doesn't charge them, if there's nothing that it costs them to do that, if he doesn't retaliate, he doesn't hold his own, he doesn't do something, then they're being told they can do this for free. So it's the same thing. Like, you're using these people to go accomplish these missions and go do these things, and the op tempo we lived was pretty bananas. It was legitimately, it went from implicit to stated, just plan on 16 hours a day all the time. Now, we did have an off cycle, on cycle, so we would get a couple of reset days in there. So there are guys that had it worse. But I mean, when you know that you're going to be running 16 hours a day, basically every day, day in, day out, and one day you're going to go from working days to working nights, and you've got 2 days to just swap your body around, and then you're going to go do that for so long, and then you're going to swap it back, and you have no idea what your mission set is. It's just going to be bananas all the time. You do develop a new normal, forgive me, but you develop a new normal, and you're not paying that price. Then that's where I'm going with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. There is a tax that comes with that. There's a price that's to be paid, and you don't pay it in real time. The op tempo is so insane. You're living so bananas that it's not until you stop doing that you have a chance for that tachometer to come down. You're living at 6,000 RPMs all the time. It's not until you come back down to 1,800 that you get a chance to realize what it costs you to do that for so long. And that price, that piper's getting paid.
Yeah.
Right? So whether you medicate yourself or whether you go get mental help, whatever, I mean, we had 22 people a day killing themselves for a reason. And it wasn't because they were bored. It's because that tax was getting paid. And they didn't know who to go to or where to go to, and they just took it on themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And that's so that's something that I came face to face with in my own terms. Right. And I started self-medicating when I came back. And I didn't go through what so many people go through. So I don't have a sob story. I just have a story, and I'm not asking for sympathy or woe is me, because it's not those things. But man, I came back and I was not normal. Like my normal had moved. And there are plenty of people that go do deployments. They come back and man, they flip a switch and they go back to themselves. And I'm jealous of that.
Yeah, it's all about resiliency. I mean, that's what they're looking into these days, mental health, right? It's just resiliency. How were you raised? What did you go through before you got into the military? Those kinds of things. All of those play a factor, right? What's your relationship with your parents? What did your parents teach you?
Sure.
What are your morals? What are your values?
Faith, all of it.
Exactly.
Sure.
Faith, all of it. All of it has to play into the resiliency. And I hate that we as military can't just be honest because we don't want to be weak, right?
So that's why I don't like the term resiliency.
Yes, exactly. See, I knew it, because that is literally like the common thing, right? That's what it's called.
What does it imply? It implies like your ability. Like
yes.
It's something that you control, and you have this measurable ability, and you just didn't have enough of it.
Mm-hmm. But I had enough of it when we were murking people or whatever, right?
And or you need someone to go risk their life on the line, to go getting pulled out.
That's right.
Of an embassy getting overrun.
Or patching up a buddy because he got shot or whatever. I can see all of that.
Yeah.
I have enough resiliency for that.
Yeah.
But I don't have enough resilience. You're trying to tell me I don't have enough resiliency
to
be able to deal with all of that now that I'm in stateside and I'm in
not getting shot
peace.
at,
I'm not getting
putting
shot
people together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, so it bothers me.
It bothers me too, but I'm just saying that's what they call it. Yeah.
And I get it. Like, there's not a perfect word. So whatever. There's probably something that's going to suck no matter what, right? But,
of course.
Man, I self-medicated, and I didn't know it. Like, that's the whole thing, you know? You don't know you have a problem until you know you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And so we talked a little bit about, you know, just how honest we are and how direct we are. And some of that comes from me learning that I miss messages. If you beat around the bush, I've had people tell me this. Logan, I tried to tell you, man, you need to chill out. I'm like, I'm sorry, was that a code? Like, that didn't come with the key. I didn't know that meant, Logan, you're insane, and you need to bring it down like 7 notches because you're stepping on your crank. Like, you're embarrassing yourself in front of people. You're hurting yourself for future opportunities because you're so intense. That's not what you said to me.
Yeah.
So I need someone to tell me, hey, Logan, when you walk into this room, you can't be 100% you, dude. They don't know you, and they take it at face value, and they don't understand your background and who you are. And so when you come in, you can't come in all Miley Cyrus, dude. You can't be a wrecking ball. You can't do it. Like, they're not built for this. You got to know your audience. Everybody has a line, and they know that line is the truth. Okay. And the more that we get politically correct, and the more that we get kind of mamby-pamby, and the more that we change what that line represents, then that line moves. And the same thing is to be said, because my goal is not to get on a tangent, the same thing is to be said about how honest we are. So the less honest we are, the blurrier this line gets. And the more honest we are, the contrast is true, the more starkly clear where this line is. And so for me personally, I joke all the time. Like, we all have our whatever reasons, right? Like mommy issues, PTSD, whatever it is, right? We all have our thing. I joke all the time. I got 4 kids. I've got a castle. I've got a resort in my backyard. I've got a job. I've got a team that I'm building. I don't have time to keep my lies straight. So I need to just tell you the truth so that when I come back to revisit whatever we talked about, I'm not trying to decipher what I may or may not have said or what I may or not have implied. Yeah. If I just tell you straight up, hey, here's X, Y, and Z, there's not going to be confusion.
Well, so I think it also has to do with the way that we operated overseas, right? Like, you may not have been on the ground overseas, but we operated at about the same tempo.
For sure.
If not at the very same tempo, right? I mean, and so, like, when you operate at a tempo like that, you don't have time to beat around the bush.
It's the opposite. You're trained to remove the bush from your vernacular.
Yeah, absolutely.
What you say is what you mean, and mean what you say.
Yeah, and because if you don't, like, we don't have time for that.
No,
like,
people's lives are literally in the balance.
Yeah, every half a second, you need to be making a decision that could change or save somebody's life.
So we operate as a 4-person crew, right? And you have to be, it's weird, man. I'm getting goosebumps. I know you can relate to this because anybody that operates in very small teams understands this. You build these relationships where you're simpatico. It's the only way I can think of to describe it. Like, you know how this person thinks, you know how they operate, and as much as you're not supposed to, you can anticipate what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, and you are ready for that so you can do your part no matter how big or small, and everything goes the way it's supposed to go. Right? Yep. And you do that it's just all the time because you know you don't have time to mess around and be wrong or be sloppy because it could cause a distraction that takes away from the ability to focus on what's most important, and that is executing the mission and executing it safely and everybody coming back.
Absolutely.
Right? So you just operate at this razor thin margin all the time. It's all you know.
Yeah.
There's no other way to live. There's the people that don't operate that way, you resent them.
Yep.
You want to break them. Everybody needed to know the standard was the standard. And if you fell short of the standard, we are willing to do whatever it takes to make you understand the standard is the standard for a reason.
Absolutely.
And we cannot afford for you to not hold the standard.
Absolutely.
So we live in that intensity. We live in that honesty. And after a while, I think it just becomes you. I don't think it's a hat you take off when you come home. Right? Like, my wife said to me, she's like, these aren't your soldiers. About our kids. Like, that chokes me up, dude.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing got said to me.
Yeah, I think about talking to my kids that way. And as they grow, it's different. Like, you can reach them differently, right? But, man, move with that honesty, it requires accountability, right? I'm going to come back to where we were a minute ago. And, you start talking about you getting into self-medication. You don't know you have a problem until you have a problem. You can't be accountable for something, right? That's why the 12 steps is the first thing you have to do is admit you have a problem, because they fundamentally understand everything comes from that. psychologists, all of it, right? Everything comes from awareness. How can you be resilient if you don't understand what it is and how it works and all those things, right? So you have to be aware of what you have going on. I didn't know I was self-medicating. I just knew I couldn't stand to be sober. Like, I just didn't know how to deal with life. In my mind's eye, while I'm driving, this guy cuts me off right after I'm back from my deployment. And I just lived like everybody's life is on the line all the time. Complacency kills. It's just hammered, 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 hammered. You live on the razor's edge all the time. And this dude cuts me off, and I've got my little girl in the back. My wife's in the car, my little girl's in the back. And all I can think is, you would jeopardize my family's safety. Like, you're putting my family at risk so you can get in. It's so far from acceptable. Like, I'm literally ready to kill you with my bare hands. And I saw it. Like, I Dale Earnhardted this guy. I fishtailed him out. There's this huge grass opening on this on-ramp. I fishtail him out. I casually exit the vehicle. I walk over. I punch the window out. I grab this guy by his lapel, and I just start bludgeoning him until I can't move my arm anymore. Because how in the world do you think it's acceptable to risk my family's life? Like, I would have died for my brothers that weren't even my brothers, and now you're willing to risk my little girl's safety? Like, how? You're so far from where you belong, brother. And that's when I knew. Like, my wife couldn't, we're in a Tahoe, and it was like we're in this building, dude. It was like the end of a hallway. She was so far away from me.
Oh, yeah.
And she literally looked at me, she said, you got to get help. Like, no. I don't know you. And I was like, oh my gosh.
No, I think I think all of us really hit that point to where, like, we kind of have to, you have to realize that you have a problem. You know, I always tell that story about me, like when I went to inpatient, right? Yeah. So the first day I got an inpatient, first day it was like midnight. So like they just basically,
sure, here's some blankets.
Yeah, here's some blankets and see you in the morning kind of thing. Yeah. So I wake up and there's a bunch of vets there because it's a veterans program. And so I go to my first group at like 8 in the morning. I sit down at a group and they're like, okay, tell us who you are, what's your branch of service, and what are you here for, right? And I'm like, cool. I was like, so, hey, listen, my name is Michael Buchanan. I said, I'm in the U.S. Army. I was 10th Mountain Division. I said, I'm still with 10th because I was still active. I was like 10th Mountain Division. I said, I'm a 19 Delta. And I said, I'm here because everybody feels like this would benefit me greatly to get some help. And
I'm here because everybody said I should be here.
Yes. Yeah. So then this guy, I'll never forget this. This guy literally changed my life. I wish I could remember his name, but this guy is huge. He's like 6'3" or whatever. He like big burly dude. Yeah. Gets up and he's like, dude, get the F out of my group. Get out.
No way.
And I'm like, what is happening? Right? Like,
I'm here to get help and you're telling me to leave. I don't know what's going on.
Now I'm like ready to fight. Like I'm like scared, but like I'm ready to fight if I have to kind of thing. And so I looked at the social worker, and the social worker was like,
you should
get out. Yeah. She's like, get out. And so I was like, this can't be real, right? So like I sit out there, the whole group, ends whatever. He comes back over to me. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's gonna like hurt me or whatever. I was like, here we go, right? And so like I'm like balling my fists up underneath the table, and he's like, hey man, I'm really sorry about that. He goes, but I take my recovery seriously. And he's like, you're wasting my time.
Wow.
And he goes, you're wasting my time for a multitude of reasons, but let me tell you the first one, why you're wasting my time and you're wasting your time. He said, you're not here for everybody else.
Yeah.
He goes, and if you don't understand that, you're just wasting your time here.
Yeah.
He's like, why don't you go and think about that? Why you're really here. Yeah. And that changed my life forever, because after that, then I finally took accountability, right? I finally admitted that there was a problem, and I finally started taking accountability for my own actions.
Well, here's the deal. Like, so everybody has that whatever aha moment, right? I don't think I could have heard it from anybody but my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me personally, like she's the only person that has, at least at that time in my life, she's the only person that had the ability to like penetrate the shield and speak to my heart, and I'd hear it. Everybody else, I was still so young and so dumb, and I went through this, like, my deployment was rough, dude. It was tough. Like, I went through some really personal stuff on that deployment, and I got really, like, I hate to say mentally abused, because that's probably not fair, but man, just I got more or less really bullied by my leadership, and what that does to you emotionally and mentally, right? To connect those dots and realize that your leadership is hanging you out to dry. Once you figure that stuff out, like that's tough to process, because here you are jumping all these hoops and putting your life on the line, doing these things, and like the people that you count on are the ones that are actually making your life hell, and you don't know it. So I was in this pretty bad place, and so I was very defensive, and I didn't realize it again. I was living in that space, and my pay got all messed up. following the end of the deployment. So there's all these challenges that come with life. And again, just in a really, really, really bad place. And thank God, legitimately, thank God for the VA. Like I'm
gonna let that one ring true.
Man, I'm gonna try not to lose it emotionally here. But dude, so you and I haven't even explored a lot of this, but the VA, there's two people in my life that I'm open about, like having a direct impact and potentially, I hate to say save my life because that's really dramatic, but for sure saving my marriage. And ultimately, like, there's a lot that comes with that because how much my wife means to me in that relationship. So when I went and saw the gentleman that I saw through the VA, that guy really did change my life. You know, he, I'm not going to like, it's not the story we became best friends, but he became this incredible person to help me. He understood me. I could be honest with him and not be judged. Like I could be all of me. And he was just like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, how is this helping you and how is this hurting you? And he turned on all these lights in these places where it was just like, I kept telling him, and I still remember it clear as day, dude. Like I can almost describe his office, you know, and it's 15 years ago almost. I said, it's like there's this beast inside of me and he only knows how to operate at 1,000,000%. And anything that gets in the way just gets trampled. And I wish I could turn it off, but I don't know how. And it comes out in all these bad ways. And it's not like I was terrible. I wasn't like throwing my life away. I was highly decorated. I was a stud in a lot of different categories, but I didn't know how to process a lot of things. And I didn't know how to function in a lot of simple manners. And it created chaos. And it was devastating in my marriage. It was devastating in my military leadership relationships because I was just like, I was so defensive. It was basically like, do you want to fight right now? More or less, right? Like this rage existed. And man, he just put all these tools in front of me. And this dude just operated with zero judgment. And it was unbelievable. We did some couples counseling together with him, and he ended up being this phenomenal resource. I had some financial challenges, and he pointed me to some entities that were able to be really helpful in a pinch and really open some doors that I didn't know existed. And man, make no mistake, they mattered. Man, a voucher for gas went a long ways. Mm-hmm. A voucher to go to the grocery store went a long ways. And they put me in these positions just like I was in this weird gap between like when I got back and what I was doing with my life. I thought I was joining this unit. I was going to have this job waiting for me, and all that fell through. And a lot of that was self-inflicted. And suddenly the things I had figured out, I didn't have figured out. I had a family and I didn't know how to provide for them. And like the pressure that you feel as a man to take care of your family, provide. I mean, dude, I just didn't know where to go. And I wasn't,
yeah, we're just shooting blanks everywhere, man.
I was, you know,
that's what I felt like.
Yeah.
Too. I just felt trapped.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you felt, but I felt absolutely trapped. Like there was like nothing that I could do right.
So I think I felt the opposite of trapped. I felt like I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
I had no idea where to go. Like I had this plan. I put all my eggs in this basket. I re-enlisted in the Army without talking to my wife.
I did the same thing.
Dude, yeah. So young us. Yeah. Don't follow young us.
Yeah, you should not do that. Happy wife, happy life is really what it was. I even looked at the camera to say that. Yeah, happy life.
It's true for a reason, okay?
Yes.
But yeah, so dude, like that guy is Dave Baird. Shout out Dave Baird. If you ever hear this, dude, you legitimately saved my marriage, and later he saved my life. Like it's possible he saved my life because you fast forward handful of years and I almost committed suicide. True story. And like my life was perfect, right? I was like the freaking poster boy. I had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, nice house. I had a good job. Like everything was great, right? And I still to this day don't know what happened. I think spiritual warfare is a real thing, at the risk of sounding crazy. And I went through something pretty crazy. And I actually envisioned how I do it. Not just how I do it. Like I knew down to the details of if I left a letter here, and if I did certain things here versus here, it would affect my wife versus it would affect my children, right? And I went through this whole thing, like it was clear as day. And it was like witnessing myself. They called it a disassociative event. And it cost me my career, to be honest about it. So coming back to what we talked about earlier, I had a gentleman, I was doing an SRP, and I had this gentleman, and I was like, hey, man, I kind of, like, I think I should say yes to this question, but I'm scared. And he walked me through how he went through this whole deal, and he had some mental health challenges in colleges, and that term is so broad, right? But they put him on medication to help him focus. And he goes, look, I need you to understand that, like, this can be a chapter in your story. You don't need to look at that yes as something that's definitive. Now, I'm gonna look at the camera for this. Be careful who you trust. That dude was right, but what I didn't understand was when I went and was just totally transparently honest with the wrong people, it did cost my career. I lost my wings that fast because suddenly I went from being trustworthy to, well, this guy might kill himself. So I'm not going to tell people do not get help. You're going to talk about some paths to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I literally just did research on that, right? Because I just went to an event that was with RTAG. It's a national organization that brings together military pilots from rotary pilots to fixed wing.
Yeah.
And so they have the same problem, right?
Yeah.
It's because, like, especially being civilians now,
when
they transfer over, the military will let them fly with PTSD.
Sure.
Right. After a year of counseling or whatever, right. They ground them for like a year.
Yeah.
And then they reassess them, psychological assessment. And then they're like, okay, you seem to be pretty under control now and you're functional. So, like, let's get you back in the sky. And as soon as they get out and they have that diagnosis, the FAA is like, no.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're never going to approve you for this. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, like, maybe you can go fly cargo.
You're blackballed.
Yeah. But you're never going to fly
Blacklisted.
passenger.
Yeah.
You're never going to fly a private.
Yep.
Right. So then I had to do a lot of research on that in the past couple of weeks. And so the thing that the process that I figured out, the loophole, if you will. And if the FAA hears this and fixes it, like, my apologies.
Then they're doing it wrong because they're missing the boat.
Yes, exactly. I mean, they're missing the whole point, right? And honestly, I still think that the FAA should be sued for it because I feel like it's an infringement on your disabilities. It should be covered under America. It should be covered under ADA is what it should be covered, like it is at the police departments. Like, you get a psychological evaluation. If you pass the evaluation, you're good to go.
So that's the thing, and we're going to go back and forth a little bit. I like this. The gentleman that sat there with me, he's like, look, dude, I went through a really low point, and that medication that I took, actually, it wasn't like something like lifesaver, but it did help me focus on all the things I needed to focus on. So it didn't allow me to focus on the low point, and it just leveled me out. And he goes, I'm going to be honest, I took it for a couple years, and I got to a point where we got to have a conversation. I said, I don't think I need this anymore. And it turns out I didn't.
Well, that's what I tell people that all the time with medication, right? Is medication is either it's either a crutch or a wheelchair.
Sure.
Okay. Like, sometimes, like, if you get hurt, you're gonna need a crutch, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't get around. It's used for movement. It's a tool.
Yes, it's a
that's
tool.
used temporarily to help you move forward. Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes medication is a wheelchair, and sometimes you're gonna be born and you're gonna need a wheelchair, or something's gonna happen to you, a major life event is gonna happen to you, and you get in a major car accident and your spinal cord gets severed or something, and you're gonna need a wheelchair. That's not the end of your story. It just means that now you need this wheelchair to move around, right? Like, you need this wheelchair to get around and to keep moving forward through life.
Yeah.
Sometimes medication is a wheelchair. Sometimes you need that wheelchair, but not most of the time. It's a crutch. You need the crutch for a period of time to get you through this healing process.
Well, it's just, and I won't go too far on this tangent, but we have these really weird things in society. Like, if you go self-medicate, like I did, like I had a problem with drinking. I do say had because I don't have a problem anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking because I don't want to feel something. I'm drinking because I enjoy hanging out and have some beers. But I went through a period where I had a drinking problem, and I had to stop drinking because I realized I am running from something. But that doesn't haunt me.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter that I had a drinking problem. I could even have a drug problem. That won't haunt me if that's 5 years ago and I'm clean and sober and all those things. It's like, okay, go do whatever you want to do. But if you were suicidal for some unknown reason, if you were deemed suicidal, maybe you weren't even actually suicidal, but you were going through a weird thing and it was awful and you just felt low and sad and alone and couldn't figure it out, man, that's a brand. That's a permanent brand. And there's no escaping it in certain venues. So when you were telling me that there's a way that you can go self-admit, you can go not turn yourself in, but you can go show up and you can get help.
Yeah.
And it's not viewed as, you were suicidal. That blew my mind because I wish I would have known about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tell veterans this all the time. I say, listen, if let's say you're going to the VA and you're being honest for once, right?
Yeah.
I always suggest be honest, okay, about how you feel. If you feel suicidal, be honest that you feel suicidal. I'm constantly honest about that I'm homicidal. Like, I'm I know you're laughing about it, but like I'm constantly honest about it because like I seriously have homicidal thoughts all the time. Like when someone pushes me to the edge or whatever, right? Like I always think about doing that kind of stuff to people, but I never have a plan, and I manage it in a very constructive way, right? Like I go. And I have my things that I use to manage it, right?
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? like I have my coping mechanisms.
I thought you were saying cocaine.
No. So I have my coping mechanisms to deal with, I have ideations, okay?
Sure.
So people are allowed to have ideations. You're allowed to have an ideation.
It's not
okay?
healthy to talk or to think about having an affair, but it's different to think about taking the waitress out versus taking the waitress out.
Exactly. Like you can think it. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to use the waitress thing, you can think about taking her out all day long.
Sure.
You can window shop, basically, right? But the thing is, like, once you have a plan,
don't recommend that.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, once you have a plan set to like really start talking with her and engaging with her, and now you've had like a whole conversation in your head before you've had a conversation with her. Now, like, you're way beyond just an ideation.
I think our society like draws the line at having a plan.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it is.
Right?
Yes.
Legally and
yes.
You get into morals and that type of stuff. It's a little blurry, but.
So, like, the thing is, I always tell veterans, I say, listen, if the VA doctor says, like, you need to spend 72 hours somewhere, spend 72 hours there because there's a difference, okay? And it comes down to the Brady Bill, right? So the Brady Bill is what covers whether we can own a gun or not, okay?
That's right.
And so there's a difference between being self-committal,
yes,
okay, or being committed against your will. There's a large difference between that, okay? No one wants to legal you, which is basically what we call it in the medical world, where like we hold you against your will.
That's where you're voluntold?
Yes, you're voluntold, okay? What we always try to do, and VA providers are like coached in this too, right? Is that they're always trying, okay, to get you to say yes to a committal, right? Because if you say yes, then you have self-committed yourself to a mental health treatment.
Okay, so let's like...
Which is very different.
Can we unpack that for a second? Because I don't want to gloss over this. I think I represent a humongous percentage of the population.
I'm sure.
When I assume that me saying yes to that leads to the voluntold.
So it does not. So
right. I think that's why it's important for us to discuss this for a minute because.
So it does not. No.
I think we're conditioned. I mean, a lot of things. We're conditioned to think, oh, I got to be strong, not weak. I got to be conditioned to take all this on.
You're also conditioned to think that that's being committed.
Right. That's where I'm going next is we're also, I believe, and maybe that's I hate to, get into generational stuff. But I think maybe some of that's that older generation that's like, stop being a punk, figure it out, toughen up.
Sure.
But the reality is if that is an opportunity for us to get help without that brand, dude, say yes all day and twice on Sunday because I'm here to tell you nobody wants you to go through that on your own and nobody wants you to endure that and nobody wants you to reach the end of your rope.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are you kidding me? Like again, when you told me that there was a way period, I told you I wish I would have known that. I said I wish I would have known that a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like we all go through these challenges. A couple years ago, I went through a thing where I was severely depressed. I'm embarrassed and I shouldn't be, but as a super alpha go-getter type A producer in life, like it kills me to think that I didn't know how to get out of bed. And I just kept saying to my wife, I wish I just need to catch my breath. And I think about if I could have had 72 hours to be in an environment where like the noise just turned off, the noise of life turned off. And I'm sorry for my wife that maybe I needed that. Like I needed to step away from our family for a minute. But if 3 days could have put me in a position where I could have gained perspective and caught my breath and had somebody walk me through some coping stuff, maybe that would have been 3 days instead of 3 months.
Exactly, right? And then so it also makes a difference between like a lot of veterans are afraid of losing their guns, especially in Texas, right? They're afraid of losing their Second Amendment, right? Everywhere. The only way you do that is if you've been committed against your will. Okay. Because like when you answer that question, have you ever been committed? If no one has forcibly committed you, then no, you volunteered for treatment in a mental health facility.
So that's not being committed.
No, it's not.
It's not being committed. That's an important understanding. So you going in, turning yourself in. I mean, there's better words.
Sure,
here,
whatever. I mean, but we can call it that.
Yeah. So you deciding, hey, I'm going to go get some help here. That's not you being committed.
No.
So you can still say, no, I've not been committed because committed means you've been voluntold.
Absolutely.
You've been forced to go.
Yes.
So you're not even being dishonest. You're not even just protecting yourself. You just need to understand you can get help without burying yourself, without putting yourself in a position where you feel like you're losing things.
Yes.
Potentially your career, potentially your guns, potentially your whatever. You don't have this black mark against you because you understand
Yes.
But it worked.
And I'll
That's
tell you,
a really important detail.
It is an important detail, and I'll tell you, we're running out of time, and that upsets me. But I will tell you this. Yeah, a lot of veterans make that mistake, right? And I always tell people this on the podcast. I tell everyone that I meet, okay, I always equate mental health to cancer. I always do, and I always will, because it's very similar, okay? It's similar about how it affects us. It's similar about how fast it can metastasize and kill us, okay? And so it's very similar. So people are so afraid of inpatient therapy, okay, and inpatient programming and things like that. Do not expect the VA to fix you on your first inpatient stint, okay? Like, if you have to spend 72 hours is like you going to an emergency room, okay? You're going to be in an emergency room environment that's a mental health environment for 72 hours. So we're going to assess the situation. We're going to assess whatever it is that's going on with you, and we're going to try to stabilize you as much as possible to get you to another program, right? To get you to a longer-term inpatient program if we feel like that might be necessary, or outpatient programming, or whatever it is, okay? But our job is to sustain you, right? Is to stabilize.
I think stabilize is a better word. Yeah, because, so like I said, like I just needed to catch my breath, I kept saying. And I knew, I'm a pretty smart dude. So I knew that there's an answer, a solution to these challenges. And I also knew I didn't freaking have it. I just didn't know who did. And I didn't know where to go to get it. So that's why, I mean, is it ironic? I don't believe in irony. You could say it's ironic that we're sitting here today and that we've had the conversations we've had based on, I'm looking at it through my lens, through my life, and we're only talking because I came to the VA to get care.
Yeah.
Right? So I woke up one day and couldn't lift up my arms. True story. I had a disc in my neck that was really bothering me, and I woke up one day and it went from really bothering me to I literally couldn't function. And I tried toughing it out for a couple months, and then I realized, holy cow, I should explore the VA. And everybody knows, there's a bunch of people that are going to roll their eyes hearing that, because the VA has this kind of stigma, right? It has this, like, don't go to the VA. You'll go there for a broken arm, and they'll operate on your hip. Like those are the jokes that we tell. Like, everybody knows it, right? And I think that stuff has happened in the past, and it is what it is. And there are probably facilities that are not. There's a spectrum for everything. Some stuff's awesome, and then there's stuff that's not awesome.
Well, when you run a multi-billion-dollar organization, almost $1 trillion medical experiment, let's just say a healthcare experiment, let's just say that, okay? Because that's what it is.
Sure, but I mean, it's.
I know I get in trouble all the time at the big VA for saying that it's a healthcare experiment. But it is.
They're practicing medicine, so why is it so
inaccurate?
Right?
It's a healthcare experiment because it's a socialist healthcare system in a non-socialist environment. So
what does that mean you get with it? You get some stuff that
it doesn't necessarily work great all the time. And I always tell people, a free T-shirt is not the best T-shirt you've ever gotten in your life, but it's a T-shirt.
I think you need to go into it with the right expectations if you're not careful.
Exactly, right? And so, like, it's just like, hey, listen, man, whatever you want that's better, you need to work for it and fight for it, okay? Because, like, the generation before us, I said this the last podcast, last podcast, I think I did like a little stint. Not that anybody watches it long enough to get to that point, but I said this one thing where I thanked Vietnam veterans, because I said they paved the way for the healthcare that we have today, because they were loud enough to do it, right? And they had enough fortitude to be able to offer us this kind of healthcare. But our generation just does not, and so that is a problem.
So let's go back, because I like this. Where we're at here. There's a spectrum for everything. Right? Free T-shirt's probably not always the best T-shirt. I agree to that. But that's the same with everything in life. Like, you could go buy the most expensive T-shirt, doesn't mean it's the best T-shirt, right?
Exactly.
It could just be great marketing, great branding, whatever. But my experiences with the VA in large have been phenomenal, right? I talked about when I saw the gentleman that was available to me. It was a yellow ribbon thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Luckily, that stuck with me, like the yellow ribbon thing. So I had that stupid thing I had that big one. For Military One Source, I had that stupid magnet on my fridge, dude. Like that stuff works. Okay. So that led me to the VA, that led me to go get help. And that saved for sure my marriage, and potentially who knows what else. Coming here has been fantastic. I literally couldn't lift my arms. We measured today, you get 90 degrees rotation. Today I had 82 degrees rotation.
Oh, that's great.
That's essentially as good as you can hope for, just because 90 degrees is unusual. Like, you have life happen. I'm 40. Turns out you're not operating 100% 40, most of us. So the care that I've gotten here has been fantastic. I didn't get a crappy T-shirt because it was free. I've got a guy in the chiropractic side that is absolutely hell-bent on making sure that vets are getting the best care possible. And he's going to do his part to be that rising tide that raises all ships. And he's going to do his best to help everybody here, all the other departments, act like the outside world, like act competitive, understand that when you provide world-class care, when you provide world-class these things, you're going to give better care. You're going to put people in a different position. Everything changes, right? If you look at this like, well, we're just giving out free t-shirts, so how good does it need to be? I think that there's some mentality there, right? Like that's that alpha stuff we talked about earlier. When you want to win, regardless of the measuring stick or the finish line, you're wired to give the best all the time, then you get the best. And like that's the reason you and I are talking.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that it also comes down to, I know we're running out of so much time. Like this is the longest thing. I'm gonna have to make this 2 parts. FYI. Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do that.
It's literally so long.
Okay.
So I will tell you this though, that it is more, I think, the barracks lawyers. You remember barracks lawyers?
Sure.
Okay, I think that sometimes it's more barracks lawyers that cause people to not come to the VA.
Sure.
Than it is VA services not causing people to come to the VA, right?
Oh, totally.
Because like it's literally been proven in like all of our studies that we keep doing, and it's not just us doing these studies. Like we ask these third-party organizations to do pretty much everything, so that way it can be non-biased, right?
I was just gonna say you don't want it to look like
exactly. We don't want it to look exactly right. Yeah. Like, and it's the same reason why I always tell people like I'm 60-40 pro VA, because like that's a realistic outlook, and like I'm a realistic person who works at a place that everyone hates. Okay, and so like
maybe not everybody,
not everybody, but there's
a stigma.
There's potentially a lot of people. Yes, there is a stigma, but I think
the stigma is somewhat earned.
Yes, and I think that the stigma though is just self-perpetuated by a lot of these people who have had one bad service or who have been bad themselves.
Sure,
like there are bad patients
for sure.
Like there's really bad patients who will sit here and talk to people like crap or yell at everybody because they're ready for a fight. They walk in here prepared for a fight. That they say that their buddy or 3 buddies have told them that you better be prepared to fight it out, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then they walk in here with that mentality of like, I'm going to fight the first person that says something negative to me or anything. And so then they come in here with that attitude and then they get bad service. Would you not get bad service if you sat down in a restaurant and you were like, hey, barmaiden, drink now.
Yesterday.
Okay.
I mean, why am I waiting? But so here's the deal, right? Yes, I 1,000,000,000% agree with that. But at the same time, when I started this process, I was told it was going to be like 4 months.
Yeah. But it wasn't 4 months.
To get my MRI appointment.
Was it 4 months?
No, thank God it wasn't. Like I get some of the credit here because I understand people.
Yes.
So I treated people awesome.
See?
Right? I was like, hey, waitress, when you get a chance, right? And so through building some relationships, people were like, hey, you know what? Stuff comes open, and if you do X, Y, and Z, you can take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And if this A, B, and C happens, then hey, guess what? I'm going to see if I can help you out. Now, there's a lot of people that come in like that wrecking ball. They burn bridges, they hurt feelings, and people don't want to help them. That's the thing. That's the thing in life.
And I understand, like, you know, people will talk about this all the time on social media, and I don't really want to get caught up in this, but like people talk about this all the time on veteran posts, social media too. Like, you know, like the North Texas Veterans veteran page or whatever. Yeah. Okay, people will comment and they're like, the VA just won't help me and blah, 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 blah. It's not that the VA won't help you.
True.
You're never, the VA is always trying to help you.
Yeah,
but like we also need you to help yourself, right? And to like, I always tell people this, you're not entitled to anything.
Amen.
You're not entitled to health care.
That's true.
Okay, you're just not. You're not entitled to the health care that this place provides you. You are very deserving of this health care that this place provides you because you served your country. So you are deserving of every last drop of health care that you can squeeze out of this place, okay? Yeah. And you are deserving of world-class health care because of what you have done for this country.
Right.
But you have to remain deserving.
Not just that, like you have to take ownership of it.
Yes.
Like, maybe I'm deserving, but I genuinely don't expect someone to be like, hey, Logan, would you like to come in on Tuesday? No, that's not how it works. Like, I am responsible for getting my health care started.
Yes.
I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything, but I know I can't lift my arms, so I got to make phone calls, and I got to go jump through some hoops, and it's a pain in the butt. But like, you got to take ownership of your half of the coin so that the people on the other half of the coin can do that, right? And so there's a bunch of people. There are always going to be bad apples that bring a bad light to things. And you and I are sitting here today because I've had a phenomenal experience with the VA, and I was talking to my provider about that, and he was like, dude, I know a guy that you should talk to. Like, you guys are wired kind of similar. I think that this could be cool. You guys might really hit it off. And lo and behold, I had no idea, like, this is where I didn't think this was going to happen. And here we've had some fantastic conversations, and this has been a cool experience. And again, like if you're wired, your goal is to help people and you want other veterans to benefit from the lessons you learned the hard way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell veterans this all the time. I say, listen, it's like playing 5-card draw, okay? Like you're playing poker,
sure,
okay, with your life, with all the resources that you have accumulated, okay? It's your 52 cards. It's a deck that you have to pull from, okay, to get a good hand. You cannot play this game holding 2 cards.
Sure.
It's 5-card draw for a reason because it requires 5 cards, okay? And so some people are sitting there and they're like, okay, well, I have my disability, okay, and I have my GI Bill. I'm set. And I'm like, that is 2 of the major cards.
So now let's take this analogy a step further, right? The dealer actually answers to you. That's what's crazy.
Yes.
The dealer answers to you. There's nothing that's ever final. You get assigned something. You're like, hold on, I want to, like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I don't know if I want to have surgery. Are there other options? Or, I'm getting a really bad vibe from this location. I don't think I want to trust this location.
Or a doctor.
Or this doctor, right?
You can just change doctors.
Yeah.
Just like that.
You don't want to go to Dallas? Come to Garland.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to go to Garland? Go to Sherman. Like, you need to feel like you are where you're going to get that best healthcare, which, shameless plug, I've had fantastic experiences at Garland. So you want to come check out Garland, I think you'll see what I've seen. But man, like, the dealer answers to you.
Yes.
So if you want to play 2 cards, shame on you.
That's right.
You want to take a crappy hand and blame other people, man, shame on you. It's your life. Grab that bull by the horns and take advantage of the opportunities here, because you are deserving and there's an awful lot at your fingertips. You just got to be willing to grab the freaking wheel.
Yeah, well said. I'm going to end it on that because it was well said. That was extremely well said. I know that everyone's going to think that you're just some super advocate, but here's the thing is, like, I think that a lot of us are just normal. I'm not a super advocate and I work for this place. I do a freaking podcast with the VA and I'm not a super advocate of the VA.
It's
by
really
any
simple.
means.
If you live in North Texas, I think Tender has some of the best barbecue possible, and I will convince you that I think you will have the best experience by going to Tender for barbecue.
Yeah.
So it's no different here. If I've had a fantastic experience, I'll tell you the same thing. If I love my car, if I love my realtor, if I have a fantastic experience, I am of the belief that why shouldn't I share that? Like, I want you to have that same experience. I'm not greedy. I don't want to keep it to myself. I want everybody to have that.
I think you said it best. I think it's all about just getting connected with the right connections,
Amen.
right? And just making the right, and just knowing the right people or knowing who to reach out to. And honestly, it's such a shame because, like, I have some people that, like, even complain in the comments of, like, this place or like in this, like, podcast about the VA stuff or services that they've received. But the thing is that they're literally listening to me speak, and they could literally just reach out. My email is in the description. It's in the comments. It's in everywhere. Okay, so, like, there is no excuse to not reach out and just ask me, like, how does the system work? Like, what is it like? What hoop do I have to jump through? Like, which place can I avoid this paper or this paperwork or whatever, and just go straight to this? Well, no, because you got to do X, Y, and Z first, and then this, and this. And I know it's a pain, but, like, this is the way that we have to do it.
It's the rules we have to play by.
It's just the rules you got to play by, right?
I
Like,
think
there's always rules to a game that you have to play, and this is no different.
It's always going to be easier to complain than it is to take that first step of fixing it. So.
I think that it all comes back to it all circles back to exactly what we were talking about this entire podcast, which is mental health and accountability.
Amen.
Because, like, I think that people, even if they think they have the greatest mental health, right, and that they have the greatest resiliency, nothing bothers them, okay? If you're getting upset, okay, at this system and you're not doing anything about it, you're just as part of the problem, right? And that you have an accountability issue with yourself.
You don't have to have the answers. You just have to be willing to say,
yes,
I need help.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And figure out the way. You don't have to fumble through the dark either. There's a lot of us who utilize these services. I refuse to be put in the front of the line for anything at this VA, even though everyone knows me here, okay? I refuse to be for things to be moved out of my way. Refuse it, because I want to use the same services and I want to take the same amount of time that everyone else does, because I want to suffer with the rest of you. Okay, I refuse it. I refuse it for a reason, because I know if there's a problem, then I know that I can talk about that and I can try to figure out a better solution, or I can advocate for a better solution. I am part of the problem. I mean, I'm not part of the problem. I am part of the solution, not a part of the problem, right? And that's the thing, is, like, because I know how to go about making that change. And I think if everyone else did, we'd have a whole army of people that would just, I mean, imagine all the people out there that we could have that would be advocating for healthcare and then advocating for all these better things. they don't listen to us as employees as much as they listen to you as a veteran.
Well, and that's why I'm here, right? Like that's the reason I came.
Sure.
We talked about this, and I said it in the beginning, and I'll say it again. You mentioned fumbling around in the dark, man. I've said this to a couple of buddies. I've said this straight to them. I said, I am firmly of the belief that I walked this path so I could be standing here today and be ready to have this conversation with you and know what you're feeling and know what you've been through, and not just say, hey, I'm your friend and I care about you, but to say, I know the path that you're on, and if you don't stop, I'm telling you what's in front of you. And that's the difference, right? Like,
absolutely.
You want to talk about advocating, you want to talk about mental health, you want to talk about these types of things, you want to talk about all this jazz. We're all on our own path, but you know what? A lot of that path overlaps. A lot of that path is the same path. And we get to that point where if we're not careful, we say, oh, good luck. It sucks to be you.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm trying to belittle anyone's problems either.
Not
it's
at
just
all.
It's just that I've been there.
No, it's the opposite.
Yeah,
like,
I've been there.
You're
and
not
I've
belittling. You're saying, I have been there.
Yes.
I have fallen down. I have tumbled down the freaking mountain.
I've been right where you're at.
And I'm telling you, like, you can keep whining about it, or you can get some help.
Yes.
I think that you grow less sensitive to things as you experience them over and over again. Right?
Of course.
And in your specific scenario, you experience people kind of whining a lot. So I think you might develop a little callousness towards that, as any of us would.
Yep.
But the reality is, it's the same thing. Like with your kids, you're like, dude, put some shoes on. If you're sad about stepping on, I told you, put your shoes on. Just listen. You can't reach it. Just ask for help. I'll help you. It's the same thing. We're asking adults to just take that accountability and just be reasonable and say, dude, why are you doing it on your own? Like, what? You're making a mess. Just ask for help. No one's saying you have to have all the answers. Yep. They're saying just ask for help. We have all the resources. We want you to use them.
Exactly. And I will tell you that, like, accountability works both ways too. So we need to hold the VA accountable for every misstep that they have. If they have even one misstep, it needs to be held accountable for it. There needs to be accountability, because they will take that. They'll take that inch and they'll steal 10 miles.
But that's how they grow also.
It is.
We make the system get better by utilizing the system.
It has to be a partnership.
Yes.
It has to be a partnership.
We have to find the places where there are deficiencies and then say firmly and kind of loudly and repeatedly, hey, this is a problem. And then when you do that, guess what happens? Someone says, holy cow, that squeaky wheel needs grease. Let's get it fixed before it causes us more problems.
Yeah. Or most of the higher ups who really, really, really care. I mean, like, most of the secretaries, like, I know that they seem just like politicians, but a lot of them, like, when they come and like talk to us, like, as employees, like, you can tell, like, they're really in it for like a really
interest.
Yeah, it's a really good vested interest for them, because they could have chosen another political position.
They could have picked something way easier,
way
glamorous.
easier. Yeah, Department of Transportation director or whatever. I mean, they're like, we should put a street light here.
Yeah,
you know, you know what I'm saying?
With like real problems.
Yes,
there,
exactly. They could have done anything that wasn't less in the spotlight, but they chose to do something that's very much in the spotlight.
Yeah,
and a lot of them care a lot, but it's a matter of, like, do they realize that there's problems at the lower end? Has any of us ever been in charge of anything? Did we know about all the problems that were below us? No.
And you know what's ironic is, and sorry to belabor this, but like, there's no car that gets put out perfect. There's no house that gets built perfect. Like, nothing's perfect.
It has to be a partnership between the consumer and the producer.
Yeah.
Right?
And then over time, like, those standards raise. There's a reason that seatbelts are in every car now, and they weren't 50 years ago.
Well, you don't want to get me started on the seatbelt thing, because I'll go down a rabbit hole for that. That's a government conspiracy. I'm just saying, it really is a government conspiracy, and
heated seats. I don't care. Take your pick. But
heated seats is much better than seatbelts, because that is a massive government conspiracy.
My point is, that it is a partnership like everything else, and one of the few benefits, like, is inarguable of the capitalistic society that we live in, is that when you demand things improve, they do.
Yeah, and I want to end on this. I want people to realize that the VA can hide nothing.
True.
Like, there is nothing that we can hide.
I don't think they want to.
But I know that they don't want to, but that's beside the purpose.
Yeah.
It's beside the point, okay? The point is that we don't work like in regular medical facility, okay? And we don't have billions of dollars to hide anything. Okay, like another facility does. Like, you could go down the street, you could go to one of these other major hospitals, which I won't say their name because I'm going to give a bad example, okay?
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, you could go to one of these other major hospital systems, and they could have a Dr. Kevorkian that's working there, like, literally killing everybody, okay? And they're just going to send him away for $1 million vacation somewhere, and then he's just going to disappear in Bali.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and no one's any the wiser. They're going to be like, where's this guy? We need to talk to him. And they're going to be like, He doesn't work here anymore.
Not our problem.
Not our problem.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Right.
Like, we cannot. Like, we're literally so beholden to public information and all this other jazz, right? And the Freedom of Information Act. Like, there's no hiding information for us. And so people just don't, I don't think people realize that. So I really want everyone to understand that, like, there is nothing to hide. There's nothing for us to hide. We can't hide anything. Every misstep we have to be held accountable for. And we are held accountable for most of them. Most of them.
Work in progress.
That is a work in progress. All right, man, that's literally all we have. Like, this is the longest podcast I've ever done in my entire life. I'm literally going to have part 1 and part 2. This is legit.
And the easiest.
Yeah, it was pretty easy. All right, listen, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for being on, Logan. We're going to be besties from now on, so this is going to be great. Listen, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I don't know if you listened to this whole entire thing, but if you didn't, shame on you. You missed a good podcast. And make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on YouTube. Also, make sure you listen to us if you just want to listen to the audio only. We are on most major platforms, except for Apple Music, I think. They just kicked me off. I don't know why. I'll have to figure that out. Anyways, so that's all we got for you. And as always, no matter how bad things seem to be, just Charlie Mike.
Don't tread on me. At least I got something left to stand